Welcome to Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast with Colin McDougall and Richard Zokol.
Hey, welcome everybody. Colin McDougall from Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast. Richard's in Mexico this week, where the margaritas are strong, the Wi-Fi is weak, and his laptop has officially retired. So we're going to actually join Richard in a moment. He's put together a video which he sent us this morning to give us his thoughts on the weekend in golf and a few other things. And so it's going to be an interesting week. I do want to drop this hook, though. I want to spend some time a little later in this podcast talking about a golfer most of you have probably never heard of. But what underpins that story to me is what's a systemic problem when it comes to Champions Tour golf. So we'll look forward to that. But for now, let's get a quick message, or not that quick a message, from our friend Richard Zokol.
Hola from Mexico. Colin, Joe, our Tough Lies community. I'm reporting in on an abbreviated version because I am in Mexico and my laptop has gone kaput, as they say in another language. But all is safe. A lot has happened in this past week. Oh my gosh. Prior to my wife Joni and I deciding to go to Mexico, we had a family vacation. Our children and our 5.5 grandchildren are already down in Cancun, Mexico, when all hell broke loose with the cartel situation and family members saying, don't go. But once we knew our kids were and our grandchildren down there, my wife Joni, we decided to go. Everything is fine. Everything is safe. It only lasted a couple of days. It was primarily, obviously, in Puerto Vallarta and a little bit in Guadalajara. We're down in Cancun, the other side. So everything is good, and except for my laptop. Anyway, so some high-level stuff. Colin's going to join in and have a little piece himself, but we just want to make sure we continually touch base with you. Some interesting events, obviously, that unfolded happened on Sunday as it relates to Shane Lowry. It's really unfortunate because Shane is so adored, but at the same time, everybody can relate to what happened to Shane Lowry. You know, he played exquisitely through 15 holes, through hitting his tee shot on 15, then went on to hit a couple of horrendous tee shots into the water that weren't even close. So this is indication that Shane is going to have to do something. It's kind of ironic that in the manner in which Shane handled the pressure from the Ryder Cup to solidify Europe's Ryder Cup victory, or to hold the cup. And he handled that pressure, which was, insurmountable. It was huge, a lot more than individual situation. But, what Shane's going to have to do, and everybody can relate to this. I've done this, you've done this, and it's going to be a reoccurrence of conversation because this is something that's difficult to, let alone pinpoint, but then the mental discipline it's going to take to overcome. So let's look at Shane Lowry's situation. Obviously something, and only he knows what actually went on, but my assessment in watching and understanding what happened, he thought sheared. So the type of sequence of rhythm in his routine normally wasn't there. There was something that probably got into his mind. Don't do this. Typically, all that water on the right side on the bear trap. They're just brutally difficult last few holes, and it's something that his mind, he was not able to handle. The sequence break. Something happened. If we were able to look into his mind, there in a good executed shot, there's a smoothness, there's a rhythm to it. In Shane's situation, panic set in, and there's going to be a spike up or a spike down when you're able to watch or measure how your thoughts are. And if you're in that situation, and if you think don't go right, or you're thinking of the water, you will never have a smooth motion because you're in a panic state. So Shane is going to have to address this. Some people are, if he can get some professional help in his team where they say, what were you thinking? And he has to be brutally honest with what he was thinking. And then he has to find out a routine, a shot routine that he needs to rely on. Make it as short as possible. Remember, we talked about that before. We want it short and tight because the longer it is, the more opportunity for thoughts to permeate or infiltrate our mind and take over and cause this spike or this drop and this panic situation. He was in a panic situation. Did a remarkable up and down. I think it was on 16. I'm not sure. I didn't watch the telecast, as we don't have a television down here. And he was, up and down for double bogey, fantastic. But then, on 17, the par 3, which is it's I don't think it's a very good designed hole. Difficult? Absolutely it's difficult, but that's what it was designed to be. Difficult for, whether it be a Ryder Cup or Shane Lowry trying to win his a PGA Tour event. So he makes another double, and then so it's really unfortunate for him, but it's going to be he's going to feel shame. He's going he's playing today in the Seminole Pro-Am. Going to be playing with Rory. He's going to get some comfort there, but it's not going to go away. It never goes away. You have to deal with it, and then once you deal with it, you're going to have to implement it in situations like he was just in. And then you're going to have to fight off the mental, they call them mental demons, but all it is your attention going to where it shouldn't be. Those are the mental demons. And so you need to learn when you have a routine. So when you pick up that your routine is off or isn't in rhythm, you stop, you reboot, and then you go back in there with your short, tight routine and execute. That's the only thing that's going to help you get through those difficult situations. So keep in mind that's what what he's going to have to do, and we get to watch to see how it's going to unfold. But so now today on Monday, the day after the first event on the West Coast, tournaments usually the Honda Classic. Now the Arnold Palmer Invitation, or right after the Cognizant Classic, before the Arnold Palmer, the Monday, the Seminole Pro-Am. Seminole is one of the great golf courses, one of the great memberships. I've had the opportunity to play it, loved it thoroughly. Gil Hanse did a renovation on the front nine. Now, this golf course goes back close to 100 years. They're about to hit their centennial. Gil Hanse did a remarkable job with the redesign, as he does. And then after today's event, or this year, he's going to do the back nine at Seminole. So Seminole Pro-Am is the who's who of Pro-Am. So the chairman of Seminole Golf Club is Jimmy Dunn, and this is Wall Street Titans, former PGA. Board of directors. It's really the who of Pro-Ams, and they do it just so they can rub shoulders and enjoy the camaraderie. No pressure on them and to go out and play. And by the way, they get paid some enormous honorariums, but they never talk about that. So I've always loved playing Seminole. Never been invited to play the Seminole Invitational. And but Rory's playing, Ricky's playing, Brooks Koepka. How about Brooks Koepka? He had a good through the last 3 rounds, 66, 69, 65. So the first sign of Brooks Koepka playing well as a reinstated member of the PGA Tour. So we obviously got this week coming up, the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I'm glad that it'll be interesting to see if any questions get directed in Colin Morikawa's ways, if he has, he appears that he has reconditioned his perspective. He's stated as such, but I'm hoping that there's going to be some media that ask him that question as it related to what happened to him a year ago by not denying any requests for media discussions. I think that's important. We would like to know if he's. We don't have to. I don't want to have to read between the lines. I'd love for him to say, "I apologize. I wish I could do it over," and come clean with the situation, and that way he can start off and come clean and help himself in his level of maturity and acceptance, because he did talk about how he's going to have to rethink things. So that's important. So muchas gracias, amigo, from Mexico. Good to see you. You take care, and we'll look forward to connecting on a regular scheduled Tough Lies, the Golfers podcast. Bye for now.
This episode of Tough Lies is brought to you by TrueSpec AI Yardage Intelligence. Most golfers use GPS. smart golfers use data. TrueSpec pairs high-resolution course mapping with AI-powered shot strategy. Through a mobile app that knows exactly where you are on the course, current wind conditions, elevation change, and most importantly, your shot tendencies. It doesn't just tell you the number, it recommends the club, the target, even the smart miss. All you have to do is execute. TrueSpec, AI yardage intelligence, because strategy should be automatic, pressure is not. All right, well, we're back. Great message from Richard. As he mentioned, Shane Lowry, he makes back-to-back double bogeys on 16 and 17. I thought it was pretty funny. He made a double right in the middle of the roll up the rim to win season in Canada, the national donut promotion. You roll up that rim, and sometimes it says you win a car. Sometimes it says you can win a coffee or a donut. For Lowry, however, this week, he rolled up the rim and it said, try again next year. So unfortunately for him, it didn't work out. My quick thought on it was, it seemed like the pressure of having his 4-year-old daughter follow him around on the back nine for her first time suddenly brought a new level of stress into his game. And rather than playing the shots towards the end, I think he, with a 3-shot lead, was thinking more about the win, what it might mean for his daughter to see it, sort of things that would draw you out of the routine that Richard and I tend to think is so important, and he just got ahead of himself. On the other hand, Nico Echeverria played extremely well. My view is he got a little bit lucky on 17 there. He hit a shot to the right of the flag on 17, which is not where one would be aiming for sure under those conditions, but he took advantage of it. He made the putt there. He parred the final hole, and unfortunately, Shane Lowry just was unable to make any magic happen on 18, and that's where we ended up with a wonderful win for Nico. I believe it's his third, and clearly, a very strong player with a lot of promise as we look ahead. And it just goes to show, I think, too, from a game standpoint, and playing in tournaments, you focus on what you can control. In the case of Shane Lowry, he was ahead, and it would have been very easy for Echeverria to sort of assume that he was going to end up in second and not be as focused coming in. But clearly he was, and he took advantage of a couple of opportunities, and even the great players like Shane Lowry, who did so well in the Ryder Cup, closing putt, winning putt in the Ryder Cup, folded. And that happens. That's what golf's about. So it's, very, very interesting week on tour. Now, I gave an earlier hook on telling a story about a player and why I think it makes my level of fandom around the Champions Tour not as strong as it could be, I guess I would say. I think many of us, fell in love with the Seniors Tour back then, what it's called now, the Champions Tour, with all the wonderful pros, Nicholas, Palmer, Trevino, so forth, finding an avenue for them to play. What I struggle with now, and this is a story I think is worth telling, and I want to tell you a little story about a guy named Walt Zabriskie. I'm just going to make my reference my notes here, but Walt Zabriskie, you've probably never heard of. But he was, for reference, he was born in 1935, learned golf as a caddy. His father, interestingly, when I was looking up the research on him, caddied at the same club that Walt did for many years, and was the regular caddy for, of all people, Babe Ruth, the baseball player. Walt had a brief stint on the PGA Tour. Very, very different era back then, of course. Even if you did well on the PGA Tour, the economics weren't nearly as strong unless you were absolutely at the very, very top. And life interceded. And so Walt chose a different path. He went and was a steel worker, building buildings in the Jersey Shore for many, many years, still played golf, and was essentially an iron worker for over 30 years. And then the Champions Tour, the Seniors Tour happened, and he qualified. And Walt Zabriskie won 3 events on the seniors tour, lost 2 playoffs, and almost won the U.S. Senior Open. And what a great story, to see somebody like that who, as I said, chose a different path, but a wonderful sort of character within the game, and somebody you could obviously root for. And the way the PGA's championship or Champions Tour works now, stories like Walt's will never happen again. And they won't happen because there's absolutely no way of earning eligibility on the Champions Tour without having played having a meaningful career on the PGA Tour. For some period of time, you could qualify to be on the Champions Tour. And then they kept reducing the number of eligible slots that you could earn from qualifying. And unless you were in the, previous to them removing all access, you had to be top 4 in a qualifying tournament held each year in order to gain status. So almost 0. And what's frustrating about that is I look, as an example, this week, there's a Champions Tour event. David Thompson won 13 under par, 3 rounds, very good score, and obviously playing at a very high level. But there are lots of guys and names that we know who are at the bottom of the list, not to call out, you can have a bad week, of course, and I'm not saying anything long-term, but Jesper Parnevik, he shot even par if he lived in Shawinigan, Quebec, right? Which is to say he averaged 80 for 3 rounds. And Fred Funk wasn't much better. And those are household golf names if you're into golf, of course. But I look at those scores and I think, well, what if there were more Walt Zabriskis that were on the tour, that were playing and competing at a very high level because they spent every ounce of spare time and energy doing, what life required and preparing themselves for a new life. You become an empty nester, or you have a family that's sort of close to, moving out of the household, and you could spend your 50 to 60, 65 year old age focusing on playing high level championship golf with some of the best players in the game. And I just think it's a terrible shame that we are missing out on stories like that. I think one of the big things that all of the tours and all of professional golf really miss is the notion of storytelling as a means of driving interest in your engagement with the game. And I have little to no ongoing knowledge or interest in what's going on this Champions Tour these days. And I think it's because we miss out on great stories like Walt Zabriskie. So I wanted to share that thought for this week. I also want to share a couple of quick updates on the other tours. Brooke Henderson seems to still struggle with her putting. She, ball striking wise, all the stats suggest she's at or near the top level, but she continually has, 3 or more putts per round, where she's behind her fellow competitors. On the PGA Tour at this week's event, there were several Canadians who did well. Mac Hughes, of course, no name. AJ Ewart was close to the lead after round 2 and ultimately ended up in the top 15, made a substantial check, as well as Sudarshan Yellamaraju. I looked up the exact pronunciation of his name. So so both of them, I would say huge kudos, because when you're on your first year on tour, playing new courses against top players who have played those courses many times and know the ins and outs is a challenge to perform at a high level and do well against. So to see those two both have the finishes that they have, made north of 150 grand each, I believe, which is also very settling from a financial standpoint, I think bodes well for what we're going to see from both of those two in the remainder of this season and in the coming years on tour. So congrats to them. And we are looking at an abbreviated episode this week while Richard avoids the cartels and enjoy some margaritas down in Mexico. But we are very much looking forward to returning next week, having a sort of a full recap and talking about the Bay Hill Invitational. Some great stories. I have a story or two from my time actually playing Bay Hill when I was in college. And I very much look forward to sharing their stories and talking with Richard once again next week. So thanks again for joining this week. We're excited about how things are going. Please feel free to submit some questions. Our website is toughliespodcast.transistor.fm. And of course, you can catch us on all the platforms. And we, again, are really enjoying what we're doing here. We hope you're enjoying it as well. And we'll see you next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Join us next week on the Golfers Podcast with Richard Zokol and Colin McDougall.